Welcome everybody. This is the first in our seminar series for the Centre for Applied Health and Social Care Research. And my name is Priscilla Harries. I'm the Director of the Research Centre, and we're based in the joint faculty, which is an enterprise between Kingston University and St George's University of London. And today we welcome Elizabeth Taylor. Elizabeth is an occupational therapist and a senior lecturer, and she works in the Centre for Allied Health, which is led by Ian Beath. And Ian, I know, is on the call today. So we're both delighted that you've stepped up to present. And the project which you're going to be telling us about, Let's Barry White It, great title, is about an online community for stroke and brain injury survivors. So just to say a few words about the project. So the Brainwaves project is funded by the Arts and Humanities Research Council. The three leading principal investigators are Professor Carmine Pariante and Lucinda Jarrett and Professor Fiona Jones. And Fiona Jones is one of our professors at the joint faculty in the research centre. And Fiona has been working closely with Elizabeth as Elizabeth takes forward this project. So it's a creative cultural project, and it's part of a wider group of projects which are led by King's College London called Shaper. Shaper's a £2 million Wellcome Trust Award to look at arts in health. And this is one of the projects linked to the Shaper kind of programme. So we're going to have about half an hour hearing from Elizabeth, which we're very much looking forward to. And then she has a short video. We are recording today, so we will be able to put it on YouTube. So just be aware in case that might be a factor when you're asking your questions and things. You're most welcome to post questions during the talk, but Elizabeth won't be able to see until she's finished. So we'll work our way through the talk and then the video, and then we'll open up for questions. So over to you, Elizabeth.
Thank you very much. Hello, and thanks, Zilla, for that introduction and for the opportunity to share my research with you today. I met with some of the interview participants online last week to run through this talk and the kind of initial findings that I'm going to be talking to you about, just to check that they felt that those things resonated with their experiences. And they said, well, who's going to be at this talk then? And I said, well, I don't really know. I don't know. Anybody can come if they want to. And then it occurred to me that I might have just attracted a lot of Barry White fans. So if that's the case, bear with. We will be getting to Barry White at the end, but it's not all going to be about him. So this is just a bit about me. So Silla's done a lovely job of introducing me, but I thought you might like to see me in my professional context there with my colleagues in work, even though that's a bit of a rare sight now, as lots of us do a lot of remote working. And because my colleagues that are here today will know I'm very obsessed with my supportive dog, Olive. She always has to feature as well. I'll start by explaining the background to the study, which goes back quite a long way. And it's really important to know about Rosetta Life. Rosetta Life is an organisation that's been researching and developing and delivering programmes for people living with stroke for many years now. And when the pandemic hit, like the rest of us really, they had to suddenly think creatively about whether it was possible for them to take everything online. And at the time, as Silla said, they'd received a large pot of funding as part of the Shaper trial with a programme called Stroke Odysseys, and that was looking at delivery of a face-to-face programme. And the AHRC were generous in funding the Brainwaves project as a way of exploring the move to creating a performance project online. And I think that really showed recognition of the potential learning for anybody involved in arts for health really, and the cultural industry. And we wanted to know what we could learn from the pandemic and to develop resources that could allow others to share from the learning and deliver their own versions of an online programme. So Rosetta Life, it's a bit difficult to perhaps imagine what an online performance arts workshop might look like if you haven't been to one. So I'll go into that in a little bit more detail later on, but they often use song cycles. So they'll have a collection of songs that are connected by some sort of link or motif. But performance, that they're keen that it's not called a music and movement programme, although I keep slipping into accidentally calling it music and movement, because performance as an idea is much broader than that, and it includes anything that can be performed. So it might be art, it might be drama, movement, use of voice, song, written word. They've done some work with animating in the past. So the notion of performance is really important. And that big picture there is of Lucinda Jarrett, and she's the creative force behind Rosetta Life. And she's really passionate about the value of these programmes and has the aim of helping people who've had some sort of disruption to their identity to find some acceptance and work towards building or accepting a new identity. So that's where this idea of performance is really key. And theoretically, for people who like their theoretical underpinnings, it's linked to Goffman's theory of the presentation of self in everyday life. So it's this idea that you can use performance to test out ways of speaking or ways of singing or moving or being, and gradually build confidence when you see that you're doing that with other people who don't laugh at you, and it's not as embarrassing as you thought it might be. Another really important feature of these programmes that it's important to understand is that they have an ambassador role. So when people have been through a programme as a participant, they're invited to take on this ambassador role, which is, it's basically a sort of role model for new participants. So when there's a new programme, ambassadors who've been through it before and had some training kind of lead the way in showing that they can participate and speaking up and doing things and asking questions, and really just encouraging other people in the group sessions. So the question for Lucinda, as well as for the rest of us, is they've got this tried and tested model that's worked well over the years face-to-face, but does it still work online? Does this idea of gradually building up people's confidence through their working in pairs to the working in the bigger group, realising you don't need to feel embarrassed, surprising yourself by being lit up at the end in a live performance with applause from a live audience? How does that work when actually we're just in our little Zoom boxes like we are now at home? Will it be hard for people to look at the screen for a long time? Will you still be able to get big movements from people when they're like contained within their little boxes? I know lots of us tend to just stay in our Vogue spaces. And crucially as well, is it possible to build a community or the social aspects that are valuable when you meet in a group face-to-face? Can you still build that sense of community and social participation when it's all virtual? And this slide really just shows the organisations involved in the Brainwaves project. So as Sida said, it's led by King's College London. And then from St George's, we've got myself and Professor Fiona Jones doing the research. Rosetta Life are leading on the delivery and also in the strange position of being key parts of the research team and participants. And it's funded by the AHRC. So the aims and objectives are, the overall aim is to understand the implementation and experiences of an online community-based performance arts programme, with these objectives to explore experiences of participants, artists and stakeholders, identify benefits, opportunities and challenges of online participation, and to explore this concept of building an online community. In terms of methods, we're using interpretative phenomenological analysis, or IPA, which is appropriate because we're interested in people's experiences. And that includes how they feel in a bodily way during the sessions, as well as how they feel emotionally and in their minds. So I'm conducting ethnographic observations of the Zoom sessions, and I'm also included in the WhatsApp groups with the participants, and I'm receiving all the different email communications and things that they get. And then at the end of each programme, I'm interviewing participants, ambassadors, if it's relevant, people's carers or supporters, and the artists or facilitators who've delivered the programmes. There's also this Artists Research as Practice group, and that's a group of artists who aren't directly involved in the project. Well, some of them are, but it's broader than that. And they're meeting regularly from the course of the project to help problem solve things that come up and develop ideas for the continuing online delivery. So I'm sitting in on that as well. And the feedback from the first programme is informing development of a resource for wider implementation. And that's being tested out with a new programme in Donegal, which I'm also observing online. So how it works in London, it's a little bit different. There are some differences between the London and Donegal programmes. So I'll start with London. So it's a 12-week programme, but it's not 12 consecutive weeks because there's quite a big gap in the middle where the artists can have one-to-ones with the participants, and the participants can spend time recording themselves singing and dancing, and the artists can spend time developing the film, which is the end product. It became apparent early on in the online sessions that people needed supporting resources. So they were asking for things like the words to songs. So to have a repository for guidance that was being given to them and for things like the song lyrics, a web page was developed. And there was also a WhatsApp group, which was for participants to upload their creative outputs, including photos, poems, drawings, and recordings. One thing that was different about London was that it was in this live space. So you can see in that photo there are a few people in an actual room, and two of those people were the artists delivering the session, and two of them were ambassadors who'd had that ambassador training and been through programs before, and they were broadcasting to the rest of the participants, including me, who were all on Zoom in our own ordinary little Zoom boxes. And some of the people on that broader Zoom were also ambassadors. But there are more people than that involved in setting it up and making it work, because in that case, they needed camera operators, people to help with all the tech, because it was a little bit complicated, the technical support that was needed to make that work. And then somebody on the sort of main Zoom group to know when people were coming in, or trying to say things, or to pin people up on the view. So it's quite a big team effort. And the sessions involved vocal work, movement, singing, focused discussions in breakout groups. And this spiral motif or concept was developed quite early on. So people were encouraged to use that idea of a spiral to get creative and take photos of spirals that they saw in nature, or just draw spiral pictures, and later on to record themselves doing directed spiral dances or spiral songs, or things that would contribute to the final spirals film. So the spirals metaphor was really to help people think about the ups and downs of their stroke recovery. And as I'll say a bit later, some people really latched onto that as a metaphor, whereas for others it was not quite so clear. So in Donegal, again, it's a 12-week session with a big gap in the middle. So actually, even though it started in November, it's going to go through till March. In contrast to London, which was all online, Donegal is going to be a chance to experiment with a more blended approach. So the first 3 sessions were online, trying to build that community. And then this morning actually was the first time the group met in person. So I'm now we started the Donegal group, so I'm always saying I'm off to Donegal in the mornings, but I'm actually sitting in my flat in London. But today they were all together in a room in Donegal, and I felt very far away in England looking at them. So they haven't actually decided yet how that's going to carry on, and whether they're going to have a mix of online and face-to-face, and how they might mix that up. And that's because they really want it to be very much a co-created, co-designed programme. So the participants will be involved in the decisions, and obviously there's a need for a bit of built-in flexibility because we still have COVID, and it's possible that another lockdown might come in. So they might need to be flexible because of that. So again, there's a WhatsApp group and a web page or Padlet for resources. And as I said, this time it's not being broadcast from a studio, but each person's participating in the same way on Zoom. Having said that, sometimes the person that leads the movement, she has been in a studio, but she's still looking directly at us in the camera, and it feels like we're all in our own little Zoom squares still. So still there's a big need for technical support to help people join the sessions okay, and let them know things like how to change their view or how to mute and unmute. And also to do follow-ups with people to check in how they've got on after the sessions and ask for feedback. And in terms of the format of the sessions, it's similar in terms of including vocal exercises and movement and discussion, but there's a bit more experimentation with things like break times and timings to help with people that have been finding it a bit tiring. And in terms of an end product, that's also yet to be decided. They don't know yet whether there's going to be a film like Spirals or whether they'll try and do a live performance. And again, those decisions will be made with the participants as things progress. So progress so far. So far, I finished the ethnographic observations and interviews in London. There have been 18 interviews with artists, participants, ambassadors and carers. And Donegal has started, and as I said, that's a different model, and it will be really interesting to compare the two approaches when everything's finished. So I'm being a bit tentative here because I'm sharing initial impressions just from that point that I've got to so far. It might be that things look a bit different after Donegal's finished and we've analysed all the data very thoroughly, but this is preliminary conclusions. But I will say that the participants that I shared these with did very much agree that this sort of spoke to them and resonated with their experiences so far. So the first thing that has really struck me is the extent of the isolation that people experienced, particularly if they had their stroke during COVID, but also for people who'd had a stroke or a brain injury beforehand. And people really talked about all of their support networks just dropping out. And I think we might have got a bit numbed to this idea because we've heard so much about people feeling isolated during the lockdowns. It's just, I think maybe we've got a bit desensitized. And when I was interviewing people, it really did strike me that I'm quite used to, from the work that I've done before, I'm quite familiar with the stroke pathway and what happens when people have a stroke and they're in the stroke unit and then they go home and they have their rehab. But people's stories were really different. And somebody said, when I had the stroke, my future was like a blank. I felt I didn't have a future, you know. And then the other quote on this side, my carer could come up. This is after this person had gone home. My carer could come up and the physio occasioned me, but all my other people could only stand at the door. No one could have. And I felt, I don't know, it's strange to say, when you're emotionally sort of rattled and you don't feel comfortable in yourself, lots of things come to be, you know, I'm in my head, I mean. And this person, as they went on talking, was really describing feeling like he was going out of his mind a bit with the isolation, not being able to go out, not being able to have anybody coming in. And people talked about people who'd perhaps had their stroke in the past or their brain injury, talked about feeling a real deterioration during that time as well from not talking to people. So there's sort of the mental health aspect, and then also feeling like they physically deteriorated or cognitively. So it was really serious, that extent of isolation, inactivity and loneliness. And one thing I've also noticed is that, you know, it's tempting to be focused on that one little thing and organisation that I'm looking at in this research, but the importance of other groups around supporting people has really come out. So Mind, the Stroke Association, Headway, they were often how people found out about the Brainwaves group anyway. And they were sometimes the people that had been a lifeline in terms of getting people set up with a tablet or giving them a laptop that they could use so they could connect to things online. So those other groups working together were really important. But overall, this showed that there was absolutely a real need for opportunities for remote participation. So then I was interested to see people were very positive generally about their participation. So I was interested in what they valued out of all the different aspects of being in the group. And actually, they valued all aspects. So people talked about the movement being really important because of not moving around so much, and actually movement wakes you up when you're stiff and starts freeing up your body. People valued the music side of things, and some people said that it actually really helped with their speech or communication, feeling like they were opening up their throat and their ability to communicate. And some people talked about the value of music for remembering, as well as just for fun. The discussions were really valued by people who said they liked mixing with others, laughing, sharing experiences. And then this spiral concept, which was turned into the final film, was a bit more mixed. So some people found it really relatable and they could really see how all these different things tied together. And other people, that had gone over their head a bit more, but it didn't matter too much. They just were going with the flow. But the most striking thing out of all of those things was the importance of being with other people who had had a stroke or brain injury. So I've highlighted that a bit more here. because people really did emphasise that it was important not just to be in a group, but to be in a group with people who had been through that similar thing, even acknowledging that they might have had very different sorts of disability or outcomes. It felt like a safe space and a place where people could be gently encouraged to build their confidence. And in terms of this question of whether people felt they built an emotional connection or friendship or community, people said absolutely. You do get, this quote says, you do have an emotional connection. I mean, all the people, you know, we've all had the same experience. We've all had a stroke. They're all totally different, you know, everyone has a different stroke, but you're sort of connected, you know, on that level. And another participant said, so they brought to my attention other people from other areas that had had a stroke or have issues with their head. I note with very interest that people were just gently moving their limbs with real guidance by the tutors. And so what I started to do, I started to copycat what they were doing and also seeing the others do it. So that actively encouraged I, as an individual, to take part. So that's really nicely describing exactly what the intention is really with these groups, that people can come in and have sort of gentle baby steps to gradually feeling they can be sort of inspired by the others doing the same thing to do more themselves. This point is about the need for extra support and resources, and it's a bit more of a practical one. But I've already mentioned those different groups like Mind and Stroke Association helping provide things like the actual computers or tablets. But we noticed early on about this need for the WhatsApp group, the web page, video guidance for things like teaching people how to use their mobile phone to make a little video of themselves. There was a lovely video made for them about how you can rest your phone in an egg box, and that really struck a lot of people and stuck with them. So all that sort of extra teaching around the side, but those sorts of things wouldn't normally be needed in a face-to-face group so much. And it might be that people might have a handout given to them or something, you know, while you're singing a song, you might have the words passed around. But a lot of times in the beginning, people writing in the chat, what are the words? We need the words. Can we have the words before the session? So that was evidently needed, although the WhatsApp was a bit of a double-edged sword, because I'm sure lots of us are in lots of WhatsApp groups now and can relate to the fact that people would get a bit lost in the WhatsApp chat. So they might be looking for something that had been shared earlier on, and you're just scrolling and scrolling because so much was coming in. So that's got benefits for things like reminding people that the group is on and being a place where people can upload their content to. But the web page is really important for a nice, clean, go-to place for resources. That extra team, that wider team to help facilitate is really important, because as an artist leading a session, you don't really want to be having to deal with all the people that are having difficulties connecting and coming in. So it's good to have other people on hand to help with that. And one thing that I've noticed really is needed is clear explanation and signposting. And again, I think that's more than is needed in a face-to-face group. I think, again, we could probably all relate from our experiences of even this now. I expect your minds might be wondering more than they would if I was full-bodied in front of you. But it's just harder to take things in, and things need more repetition and extra clarity when you're doing things online, because people can get lost very easily. And that ambassador role as well, really key. So having ambassadors, because another feature of their role was that they would pipe up and say the things that weren't working so well or that they hadn't understood so well in the online sessions, and ask questions. So this one is a bit more of a difficult point, because it might come out as a bit more negative, but you need to keep it in proportion because people have been overridingly positive. But this is really about the fact that creative co-production, or whatever you want to call it, co-design, collaboration, isn't necessarily straightforward. So you can say that you're being very collaborative and democratic, but what does that really mean to the people involved? So I've just pulled out some quotes to try and explain that a bit more. So the first one, the one thing that I didn't understand was that they linked it in with the spiral. Have you seen it? Meaning the film. Do you know what it's about? So I didn't really understand who made that decision. So, and that was not a single voice coming out of that, but quite a few people said they didn't really understand how decisions were made. Another person said we didn't really have a clue what was going on. So again, just thinking, is there a bit more need there for explanation of the artistic process? Or is it okay just to accept that perhaps people won't know what's going on, but it doesn't really matter as long as they're getting something out of it? Somebody said they felt perplexed and confused to see and hear parts of the film that they were unaware were going to be in there, and upset and let down to have been excluded. Felt had contributed and hard to understand why this happened. And I think that's as a result of there being so much material that people contributed. There's no way everything could be included. So there is an artistic process of editing and selecting, but participants might not necessarily have felt they fully understood why certain of their contributions had been selected and others hadn't. So again, it's just thinking, how can that be really clear and transparent to people so they understand why some of well, even the fact that those decisions will be made. And interestingly, the composer involved in the project, so the person that wrote all the music, was really conscious of that issue and said, all of us are working with this material that people have come up with, and what is our responsibility to that? What is the ethics of my coming in and manipulating all this material and making something out of it? So, and actually I could relate to that because I thought, well, that's a bit like data analysis, where you've got reams and reams of data and transcripts and you pick out certain things and make a new story out of it. But he was very conscious of that process of selecting and editing what people had said. And I, interestingly, when I shared this with the participants last week, I wondered what they would think of that. And there was lots of nodding going on, and I think they felt, yes, that is a point. We do need to think about that. So yes, there is this issue with generating lots of material, and there has to be some whittling down of it. But perhaps for people who are embarking on running a program like this, there's something to be thought about how much time to spend explaining the process, and how much it's really going to be shared power, or how much more weighting there might be for the artist's vision. So managing expectations, and then also thinking about what to do with disagreement if you're telling people that that it's kind of democratic. We did have this come up in the London programme, where one participant wasn't happy about actually the Barry White song, which I'm going to play to you at the end, thinking that Barry White was not a good role model for people who are wanting to reduce their risk of another stroke because of his obesity and high cholesterol, and generally not thinking that he was somebody that everybody should be singing about. So, I mean, that situation was managed, and it was managed by saying, well, actually, we have to be supportive and appreciative of everybody's contributions, but it might just be good to think about ahead about, I think it's all managing expectations really, so people know how much of a say they're going to have individually. So overall, how is it online? Does it work? Is it any good? So the main message is it's fine. In fact, some people would say it's joyful. People have definitely benefited from participation. There are mixed views on whether it's tiring or too long. Some people clearly said it's not tiring, actually. It's not the same as being on the phone one-to-one with somebody because you're in a group session, whereas other people have said they need more breaks. So still working on experimenting with that in Donegal. There are lots of people that said they just wouldn't have been able to attend if it was face-to-face. And that's for various reasons. It might be because, it might depend on where it would be located and whether they could get there or not. It might be because of the stage in recovery that they were at with their stroke, or it might be because of not feeling safe yet in COVID times. And it was generally something that people would like to be able to work towards, being face-to-face, but certainly at the time when the London sessions were delivered, they wouldn't have been able to go. A lot of them wouldn't have been able to go in person. So it was really needed. There was quite a bit of a sense that I got from some people that they were worried about the carer burden on their partners who had to help them and support them behind the scenes, getting set up with the technology. And unpicking that a bit, I think actually they would have needed that support from their partners to take them anywhere as well, physically. So either way, there's a lot of support happening behind the scenes, but I think that needs acknowledging as well. Even if it looks like somebody's presenting there independently, there might have been a lot of work going on to help them get to that point. It certainly is possible to form a community online, and that's been interesting because we just didn't know whether it would be. And really, like most of us can relate to, from moving online, it's not the same as face-to-face, but there are pros and cons. And as somebody said, the results are the same, and it's a necessary alternative. And this quote kind of it says that this is a new world, it's a new discovery. The tablet is, well, it's absolutely essential in my life. I think just thinking about that, the opportunities that it's opened up for people, it's definitely been necessary and worthwhile. So conclusions so far, and there you go, Barry White fans, there he is. It requires a lot of work and resources. It can actually be life-changing for some people to have this opportunity to participate online. And I'm starting to feel more and more strongly that we need to keep the option of online for people post-COVID. And I think that needs attention, because the artists are going to want to be face-to-face, and people that can be face-to-face are always going to be wanting to push for face-to-face because of the fact that it's so much easier and definitely feels different. But for those people that can't join face-to-face, we need to remember them now and think, well, we do know how to make it work for them. We don't know yet whether a blended approach is better. Some people said they quite like to have a mixture of going face-to-face and being online. Other people said, no, you need to have a full online programme or a full face-to-face programme. So we'll see how that goes in Donegal, and we'll see how things about the structure and the format go in Donegal as well. But I wanted to come back to the Barry White theme. So that came from a song that was written by a participant, and that I'm going to play you a little bit of in a minute. But when I interviewed him, and the film had been finished, so everybody had seen it, and I asked him what it meant, why he'd come up with this Barry White idea, and he said that songs bring back memories for him, and for him these words meant never give up, don't give up, keep going all the time. So I'm going to show you a clip of the final film.
I will find this strength.
My goal is to climb up a mountain.
I will find strength.
I'll go out in the snow in winter, feel the snowflakes, still cold, settle on my cheeks.
I will find strength.
I'll go out, climb up a mountain. I'll go out.
I will find strength.
I'll go out in the snow in winter. I'll go out, feel the snowflakes, still cold, settle on my cheeks. I will be able to do it.
I will find strength. I will find strength.
The men that I've got in my life will probably drag me up there anyway.
Never lose courage. Like Barry White tell us, yes, never gonna give you up.
Never gonna give you up.
Yes, yes.
Never gonna give you up.
Yes.
Never gonna give you up. I'll keep on going.
Yes, yes. Yes.
I'll keep on going.
Never gonna give up.
I'll keep on going.
Never gonna give up on you.
I'll keep on going.
I'll keep on going.
Never gonna give you up.
I'll keep on
Never
going.
gonna give you up.
I'll keep on
Never
going.
gonna give up on you.
I'll keep on going.
Now that's it. I'll do it. I'll Barry White it. I'll Barry White my life it.
We'll keep on going.
Now that's it.
Never gonna give up.
I'll do it. I'll Barry White it. I'll Barry White my life it.
I'll keep on going.
Spiral, forward,
Look ahead.
Higher and higher.
Keep looking ahead.
Yes, yes.
Higher and higher, higher and higher.
Unknowing, explore the path ahead. Each curve turns backwards before we step forwards. Look back, look back.
Never lose courage.
Now look forwards, look ahead. How far we have come, God blimey. How far we have come. Look forwards, dream. Look forwards, dream. Still dream. Still dream. Still dream. Still.
Who would have thought that I, Mr. Fitness, couldn't even crawl like a baby? That I, Mr. Go-To Consultant, couldn't even remember what day? That I, Mr. Smart Casual, couldn't even button up the pajama top? But God, rich in mercy, there is family surrounding, and friends patiently decipher the mumbles, while compassionate carers brush my hair. Then we overcome nagging doubt, forward spiraling, confidence bringing back the will to get me back in the game.
Okay, so I hope that you enjoyed that little clip of the video, and it gives you a little bit of a taster of what everybody was working on. I've got plenty of time for questions if anyone's got any questions.
Elizabeth, I'll ask a question.
Hello, Fiona.
Well done. I think if you could just say what's one thing that's really surprised you about that sort of entry into their world. What's something that's you know, that struck you when you're sitting there, because it's hours and hours that you've sat watching.
I think the thing that's, I'm not sure if it's exactly what you're asking, but I think the thing that surprised me is how much, as that participant I quoted said, you do form an emotional connection with people across Zoom. And I can, and like when I see that video, I feel a bit emotional because I feel like I know them all now and they know each other as well. So yeah, that's been the most surprising thing. And I think I didn't really, also having had a year of online teaching with students not having their cameras on, not really saying much a lot of the time, it really surprised me that people did participate and have their cameras on and we could see each other and get to know each other. So yeah, that surprised me, and yeah, how up for it people are. And of course they've joined the group in the first place, so but a lot of them didn't really know what to expect and were quite tentative initially and perhaps didn't want to have their cameras on and things, but they've all given it a go and have got to that point of being more confident and able to show themselves and expose themselves in quite a vulnerable way, I suppose, by the end.
And also what some people might not realise is that you join in as well, don't you?
That was going to be my question, actually. Knowing you, Elizabeth, I think it would be very difficult for you not to take part in any dancing that was happening. And
you see me this morning in Donegal.
I'm just wondering how you sort of manage that, really, sort of having that sort of researcher role there, but also probably participating in how you manage that.
Yes, that's a very good question, Rosie. Because when you're doing participant observations or ethnographic observations, you do have to think, where are you going to put yourself on that continuum of like full participation at one end or just purely observing at the other, or somewhere in the middle. And initially I thought I would be a non-participant observer and I would just be watching with my camera off, and I've got my 2 screens, so I can be watching and then typing up my field notes on my other screen. But I realised that a couple of things. One thing is that it feels really different if you're participating. So sometimes I'd be typing notes and thinking, oh God, this sounds awful, what a cacophony, and writing that. And then I'd start singing along with my camera off and think, oh, actually, it doesn't seem like such a cacophony when you're in it and when you're singing it. So I realised that I needed to be participating at least some of the time so that I could feel how it felt. And then the other aspect of it was that I felt a bit left out. When I interviewed people at the end of the Spirals programme, I felt like I knew them and they didn't know me because I had my camera on. And I thought, well, I don't think there's any harm really. I don't think that me having my camera on and participating is having any sort of dodgy influence on the findings. I do think I'm holding myself back from participating in the WhatsApp group or the discussions, because I think that's one of those things where if people participate, it could sway the things that people are saying or how much more they participate. But I do have to really hold myself back because I'm desperate. At the moment, they've been posting their pictures of autumn leaves. I'm desperate to post my pictures of autumn leaves, but I'm holding back. But in Donegal, I've been keeping my camera on most of the time. I switch it off sometimes if I'm going to be writing for quite a bit, or if I'm doing something, like if they're all standing up doing things and I'm still sitting down, I don't want it to sort of disrupt what they're doing. And I'll perhaps turn my camera off for a bit. But I'm more visible and it's more fun that way for me as well, getting involved. And I get to see then, like, when even if we just do some stretches and some breaths, it's really beneficial, and it's for all of us when we're sitting at our screens all day, or going and doing some movements and vocalizing a bit. I get to see how that would feel to people. And also I think having an ethnographic approach to this research is really important, because just talking to people about their experiences afterwards would be very different if they hadn't had the experience of participating or being at least a Zoom participant myself. And what I've noticed is the things that I was sort of scrolling down in those workshops, and I was thinking, well, I don't know, this might just be me, this might just be the way I'm experiencing it. Then hearing that was the way other participants were experiencing things as well is really useful to be able to bring those things together. So yes, you're quite right, Rosie. And this morning in Donegal, they had their first face-to-face session. So they'd set up their chairs in a circle. And I was the only one that was sort of far away on Zoom. So nobody could even see me, but I was still singing along and having my camera on and doing a little bit of funny dancing.
So how did you manage that then? If they're all in a room and you're watching, where's your camera? They were
brilliant. It's really down to the people setting it up. They've done such a fantastic job. They had 2 cameras. They had one set up, I think it was somebody's phone on a tripod, so because it's Zoom, so they had that set up at one part of the circle, and then another one that I think was a laptop in another side of the circle, and they had a Bluetooth speaker that could go around the room. So I was actually thinking you could probably make it work if some participants needed to be at home, and obviously that wasn't the aim of today, so I didn't get so much attention. But if I was a real participant, you probably could have brought me in quite a bit more.
Yeah.
So yeah, it really helps to have people being very organised and efficient about it, because they were there. I half expected to get an email saying, sorry, we can't make it work for you to join today, but they're bang on time, opening up the session and welcoming me on my little screen. So it does take dedication from people.
Elizabeth, just picking up on that point about your involvement in the group, and perhaps in the future, forward planning, how are you going to, leave the group, and how are you going to, what's the plans for moving forward, I guess, with the group activity?
Well, again, an excellent question, John. So next week's their Christmas party, so I've been very much FOMO about not being there for the Christmas party, but I think I will try.
Is it a ski thing?
Sorry?
Is it a chalet thing with ski?
I don't think so. so, but I'm hoping I can go at some point, maybe for the final production or something, whatever that may turn out to be. I mean, I will be there to the end because it's a 12-week thing. So I'll be there till it finishes in March, and I'll get to see the project through, whatever it may turn out to be. But I did think today, it was so nice for them all to be face to face, and I could see how much laughter and energy there was in the room. And I thought, I'm not sure they're going to want to go back online if they're able to go back online after this. So it'll be interesting to see what they come up with together as a group. Because obviously for the research, it's a bit more useful if they do have some more online sessions. But we'll see. They've got more flexibility with the Donegal ones to respond in a flexible way and do whatever blended means to them, whereas in the London sessions they were a bit more restricted to it being definitely online. So yeah, we'll see, but I'll have to get closure somehow in March.
Thank you, Elizabeth. So it was a really, really interesting presentation, and a great opportunity for us to hear about all the hard work involved and all the we look forward to seeing the publications as well in due course, because so we can share the learning with wider communities. And I think also, if I don't know if it's appropriate, but when you're talking to the people who took part, to say what a privilege it was for us to share in their experiences. And, it was just wonderful to see how people could take part in their own special way, really, in ways that matter to them. And so it's a real privilege that we could share that. So please do pass back our thanks for letting us have a glimpse into their experiences. Thank you. So we've got another talk scheduled. I think it's Tushna's session. Tushna, I think if you're still on the call, you might just like to say a few words about the talk you'll be doing next.
So my work is looking at Black people's experiences of COVID, how they dealt with government messaging, the sense making they did. And as a health psychologist, I was particularly interested on how their views influenced their health protecting behaviors. So mask wearing to testing, and more recently on vaccine uptake in these groups.
So that's the 19th of January, 1 o'clock. Good to hear, Tushna. I know, Tushna, you're getting swamped by invitations to speak at the moment, so we're very pleased that you're able to join us. And also we're planning on putting on, I'm bringing together colleagues from across Kingston University to present our COVID research. So Fiona, who's on the call with us today, is leading, together with colleagues at Cardiff, a very important study to co-design an intervention to support people with long COVID and to test the effectiveness of that. So that's a really, really important study. So we're so proud of Fiona leading on that. And Fee, I know, is on the call, who's working very hard on that particular project as well. And we have Tushna's studies, which she's just completed, which was also linked to COVID, and about 10 other colleagues across the university. So in June, we're going to be putting on a one-day symposium on COVID-related research, which has been linked to Kingston University. So we hope you'll be able to join us for that too. We'll tweet things as well. I've tweeted this session today, so please do follow our Twitter feeds as well. Great, thank you so much for everyone joining today. Thanks especially to you, Elizabeth, and see you soon. Bye.